All right, so now I'm going to talk about WandaVision episode 3. This one is taking a distinct turn from the first two, which were obviously more based on the Dick Van Dyke sort of 50s, more so early 60s sitcoms. This is more based on 70s sitcoms, particularly the Brady Bunch with the stairs and all that stuff. They kind of keep the same house but change it a little bit. And then the Partridge Family in terms of the intro logo. In this episode, you find out Wanda, you find out at the end of the last of 2 that she is pregnant. In this, she turns out to be very pregnant. And basically, she goes from being pregnant to giving birth in the course of an episode. And you sort of go through a typical, I guess you could say, pregnancy kind of sitcom plot, but hypercharged. That's the one thing, this show's really good at using kind of your typical sitcom stuff, mixing kind of a traditional sitcom plot with sort of surrealism and choosing those misunderstanding things and play off of kind of arty, strange ways. And this one does it very well in this supercharged kind of thing. But here's the thing about this show. I'm sort of liking it less as it goes on. And I think a lot of that is, what's the point of this? And I don't think the show ever makes me understand that. I get that through the commercials, she's in some sort of thing, whether it's a bath or some strange hitosis thing. But when I look at the show, I think of a Community episode with Abed where everything becomes stop motion. And it makes sense because Community, Abed, and he likes media, and what he consumes a lot of media, so it sort of makes a semblance of sense, basically. But then when you watch WandaVision, where is this coming from? What is this saying about her and Vision's relationship? What's the point of the whole thing? And I think the show's the most compelling when it admits it's in this facade, but the reasons for this facade, it doesn't really connect to me. And I don't think it connects to the character. Now, I understand we don't know much about Wanda or Scarlet Witch other than the very little we've gotten throughout the show, and obviously they've changed her, she doesn't have that accent, everything like this. It just, to me, doesn't really connect in a lot of ways, because you're not really seeing a real point to what they're doing with it. They're not saying anything really about sitcoms. They're not saying anything about the relationship or the perception of relationships through these sitcoms. And I think it's showing the weakness of this show. It's this what's the point of all this? And I feel like we're just delving around in this mystery sort of nonsense until they give us some sort of a point, which I don't think we'll be able to explain all this stuff. And maybe they'll try to reverse engineer it or something like that, where they'll mention how she likes sitcoms this whole time. But it just plays as kind of this weird thing that they wanted to do that doesn't actually fit the characters in a universe that's supposed to fit the characters. So it's just awkward and doesn't really connect. And I think it's trying to say something about characters who we don't really know that much about. So it's a comment on something you can't comment on. It's I get that she wants to be happy or she wants to be with Vision, but why isn't that just in a fantasy? Why is that in a sitcom? And I continue to think that while I watch the show. And I know people watch sitcoms very excited, and there's a lot of fandom of things are excited. It's just the writing in the show doesn't really connect to what they're doing with it. I don't understand what they're saying with it. It just feels like they're just doing it to be stylized and weird. They don't have a real point and a perspective behind it, or a perspective that makes any sort of sense. I get this through Elizabeth Olsen's thing, but why? Is this supposed to be in Star Trek's Generations, where they have this beautiful fantasy and you just fall in love with it, and you just can't not be, you're just kind of enveloped in it. But then it's why would Wanda, the Scarlet Witch, think about it seriously, why would the Scarlet Witch that we've seen in the Avengers movies want to be in this fantasy? And I think that's just something that just doesn't really work, and the show isn't good at explaining it. Think of if you saw Pleasantville, but you never see the part in the 90s beforehand. How is that going to connect? And I just keep thinking, I think people like it. I think people like deciphering it, but I think the writing just doesn't really understand why it's doing all these things. And I keep seeing them being very faithful to sitcoms in certain regard and doing sort of interesting things with it, but it's not making any sort of a statement on why they're doing all these things. So it's sort of like a very empty kind of experience that is mainly to be like this mysterious thing that Scarlet Witch is in, but it's just playing up mystery, but like, why have it? And I guess when we eventually get to that point, this will maybe make me, eat my words, but I feel like this whole like spin mystery box thing, it just feels exhausting, and it just feels like someone like churning their wheels until they write themselves into a corner and sort of have to explain all their nonsense. But it's not like that nonsense becomes anything of real substance. It just kind of stays stylized nonsense, and maybe people like that, maybe they enjoy that, maybe that's fine. But as of right now with WandaVision, I just feel like we're just stuck in this whole stasis of this whole thing, and they don't exactly understand what they're doing with it. Anyway, and Buster, do you want to be on? Okay, I'll let you. Hold on, I gotta see what I'm doing. Do you wanna? Okay. Let's put Buster on to interrupt WandaVision. How you doing, man? What do you think of WandaVision? Look right there. You can look. Can you see? Alright. It's nice hanging out with you.